gorgeous, and happy Valentine's Day. This is the Korg Poly 800 from 1983, and it's probably the best Valentine's Day gift you could get for that special someone in your life, because this vintage synthesizer is only $309 right now on Reverb Today. I put a link in the description. But it routinely sells for less than $400, but today I found one for $309 with shipping, which is just crazy to think that you can get a vintage piece of analog synthesizer history for so cheap, with MIDI, factory MIDI installed, an analog chorus, stereo chorus, just an incredible synth. And listening to this sound that I modified, I would totally believe it was coming from a synthesizer that costs 5 times as much, 10 times as much. I mean, I think it sounds really, really good. I apologize, guys. I've got a little bit of a cough today. I'm going to try my best to not ruin the stream. I'm a little bit under the weather, so if you'll bear with me. But tonight's stream, we're going to go through all of the different presets in the synthesizer, as well as do some sound design. It's one of those synths that doesn't have any knobs, but it's actually laid out very cleverly. So I'm really excited to get involved with this synth, and I've just been super impressed by it. So let's start off with preset number 1. Oh, sorry, that is... let's go to program number 1. There we go. Preset number 1. Kind of a similar stringy type sound. Preset 12 or 1, 2. Put some reverb on that. Really cool analog keys type sound. Good, we got some brass here. Does that sound like a $300 keyboard to you? I don't know. What do you guys think so far? I'm pretty impressed. So this patch, this flute patch, is making use of the fact that we actually have 3 envelopes per voice instead of just 1 or 2 like you would have on the Korg Poly 6 that I have above it, or a Korg Monopoly. And you can actually use that 3rd envelope not just for the filter, but also for the amplifier of the noise. Yeah, super cool. We'll get more into the sound design stuff as we keep going here. Welcome everybody to the stream. Really excited for this one. Pretty crazy resonance, right? Wow, you know, for a synth of this size, you wouldn't think it would be able to scream like that. Sorry again for the cough there. Nice little warm strings pad. Can I get some scum organs in the chat? I hate organs. So this is a really cool. Ricky, welcome to the stream. Billy, Parbs, we got so many people here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Really excited. Okay, so that was, let's see, have I covered those? So now we can go to the next bank up. This is a really interesting one. You can hear the 6-stage envelopes in this synth. Dubstation Zero points out correctly, it actually has a kind of organ architecture, and that's because the digitally controlled, completely analog oscillators are actually sort of additive in nature, where you stack up square waves to get different sounds. We'll cover all that later on. But you can also hear that it has complex envelopes beyond your typical ADSR. So we're all familiar with the attack, decay, sustain, release. This also introduces the breakpoint and slope from like the later synth that came out, the Korg TW8000, synthesizers like the Ensoniq SQ80 and the ESQ1, the Roland D50, the Yamaha DX7 had these more complicated envelopes, and they're actually very useful, especially for a few tricks that this synthesizer has up its sleeve. We got a really nice dark. I mean, that's a thick brass patch, isn't it? Very thick. Daddy loves it thick. Happy Valentine's Day. There's a really cool kind of halfway between brass and organ. The thickness, right? I would never have believed. I guess I was thinking in my head when I bought this thing for $300, right? It's going to be like a tacky little Cassia tone sort of sound. But that analog synth... This might be the all-time most slept-on synth. It's crazy to me. Really awesome sounds, very usable. I think this synth has my favorite analog organ sounds. Just absolutely awesome sounding. Really dark synthwave bass. Moving right along. So this is one of the coolest patches in the synthesizer because it actually demonstrates what the two other envelopes are for. So you might be thinking to yourself, okay, I know synthesizers. I'm a synth snob. Can I get some scum snobs in the chat? And I know what envelopes fucking do on synths. I don't need you to tell me what an envelope on an analog synth does. Well, that might be true, but what would this third envelope be for? Well, in this synth, you actually have two separate amplifiers for your DCOs, which allows you to do some pretty crazy stuff where one DCO can be a completely different type of sound, and you can get you can think of it almost as like a single two-step wave sequence or something going, and that's what's happening here. So if I play this patch kind of fast, like that. We have a just kind of like a straight bell tone, you know, almost like JX8P type, with a little vibrato at the end there. But if I play and that second oscillator is actually being controlled by the second envelope in terms of volume. And we have a beautiful analog string pad layered in here. So what you're hearing is the, in some way, bitimbral nature of the Poly 800. At least you can use it that way. So although it has some drawbacks, like only a single filter for the whole synth, which makes it a paraphonic synth, like the Moog Matriarch, it's also got some flexibility that other synthesizers don't have at even a much higher price point. And a lot of these sounds have just this incredible, almost Juno-like character, which is also a synthesizer based off of digitally tuned analog oscillators, or DCOs as we call them. But in this case, one of these bad boys, you know, for $309, like, are you kidding me? And you can hear also the difference of when that stereo chorus is on and off. So that chorus is parameter 48. And so we could just turn that on if we wanted. And you can hear the difference in the stereo spectrum. Right. You know, if you want to get that sort of All of My Love Led Zeppelin sound, you could turn that off. We have this sort of legato brass patch. Super cool. Kind of got a Game Boy pluck. And the resonance on the synth is no joke. Mitchell Steven, welcome to the stream. I'm glad you finally caught us live too. Oh my God. Are you fucking kidding me? That sounds awesome, doesn't it? Barbs, you're right. So that's the thing about this synth. Although it is paraphonic, I was shocked at how often that didn't bother me at all. It actually has, especially in the patches, some really clever programming where you sort of forget about the fact that it's paraphonic. Of course, there's going to be certain circumstances, like say a arpeggio on like a piano, analog piano type sound, where you'll be able to notice the difference between a fully polyphonic synth and a paraphonic synth like this. But again, it still can do a whole lot. That's a good question, Parbs. I don't know that off the top of my head. I don't know what filter chip this is. I want to say it's probably the same filter chip from the Poly 61. I feel like I read that somewhere. But see, even on this patch, which to me has sort of this like analog keys type thing, I don't really notice I think they're using some pretty clever programming, again, to sort of disguise the fact that there's only one analog filter. Ah, good old helicopter sound. Let's turn that off. Wow. Just crazy, the power. Patch is using keyboard tracking. If we go all the way down there, it gets darker. Jerome is correct. Is it the same Korg filter, Nick, as the DSS-1 and DWS 6000 and 8000? I didn't know that. Jerome points out correctly that the Poly 61 had discrete VCFs, meaning that there's a VCF per voice, which this synth does not have. Poly 61, much more expensive synth, and also a synth that famously has, like most of the synths you're going to see on eBay of a Poly 61, those synths have battery leak issues where they're pretty much completely fucked. So you want to be super careful buying Poly 6s and Poly 61s. I mean, I don't know exactly what I would use that sound for, but it does highlight how impressive the resonance actually can be. See, because of the organ-like nature of the oscillators, you can get away with some really interesting... To me, this is almost like an organ string sound. Which sounds really good. To my ears, anyway. I mean, what a powerful... Yes, of course, you could beef it up. Regal, welcome to the stream, by the way. It could use even more chorus, and that's why you guys should go ahead and download my free chorus plugin, Inktomi, in the description of this video. Stack that on top of this bad boy with the reverb in there. Are you fucking kidding me? That is one of my favorite analog pad sounds I've ever heard. Mitchell, you're correct. Alpha Juno also doesn't get a lot of love and also has a complex envelope. That patch was freaking beautiful. And this has that same sort of beautiful character, but it's almost more of like that analog keys thing. You can hear some voice stealing. So when you use both DCOs at the same time, it cuts it down to 4 voice polyphony. You can hear the voice stealing there if I play more complicated extended chords. Right, you can hear them disappear there. And that's just, again, a limitation of the synthesizer. For what it's worth, I was about to say Behringer monopoly. A Korg monopoly usually goes for about, anywhere from $2,100 to $3,000, right? So up to maybe 10 times the price of the synth. And it only has 4 oscillators. This has 8. So it's just fascinating, the vintage synth market. Like obviously that synth has, it only has 1 filter just like this, right? But it's got knobs, right? It's a very pretty synth. This synthesizer is ugly as sin, right? So I think this synth is more for someone who, and maybe they don't care all so much about, how a synth looks, and they care about how it sounds more. What a novel idea. Fuck. Good old wind patch. Never do without one of those. There's just so many warm patches in here, aren't there? Really surprising. Really cool. I can't remember. Does this synth have a high pass filter in it? I don't think so. Chords. Yeah, so it's really interesting that what I'm assuming is happening here is, if you know anything about additive synthesis, you know that the fundamental frequency, right? So the lowest component in additive synthesis is usually a sine wave. In this synthesizer, it's actually a square wave. The lowest component is usually the loudest. We call it the fundamental. And in this synthesizer, you can actually turn that off. It's parameter 13 and 23 for the DCO. So you can actually get these more thin, kind of pulse widthy type stuff. So let's move on to 54. Yeah, unfortunately, no velocity here, just like a Juno 106 or a Poly 6 or a sequential Prophet 600 or a Roland Jupiter 8 or a Prophet 5 for that matter, or an Oberheim OBXA or OBX. Pliskin. Yep, that's the money right there. I've noticed a lot of these patches don't have long releases. That would probably be my only criticism of the sound designer, but that's easy to program in. This one's got a good one. This is a very kind of triangle wave reminding me of the Great Deco Tree. wow, just stunning, really, you know. And again, the link to the $309 one that I found on Reverb today is in the description of this video. I wouldn't be surprised if I've already sold it for somebody, because this thing's just so incredible. Come on, Alex, play the fucking notes. Oh, nice little filter vibrato in here. It's got the joystick too, by the way. So the joystick works kind of like a pitch and mod wheel in one. So you can do typical pitch bend, right? But you also have control over vibrato by pushing it this way, right? And then you could go the other axis and get filter vibrato. Which is kind of like an interesting way to do things. I don't know that I necessarily think it's superior. By the way, guys, I need to intoxicate. So I've got this Left Hand Brewing Breezy Does It passion fruit sour ale. I'm going to crack this bad boy open because nothing goes better than a nice cold beer with a fucking vintage synthesizer. So can I get some scum cheers in the chat? Let's go ahead and get this party started. I appreciate all of you guys for making this live stream that I do every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern here on YouTube the best night of the freaking week. I appreciate you guys so much. So can I get a scum cheers in the chat? Cheers to all of you awesome human beings. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. It's good. It's not too sour. I'm kind of a bitch when it comes to sour beers. Light passion fruit notes, nice light body. Not so bad. Yes, Dubstation Zero points out there's no CC or SysX on the Poly 800. The Mark II has SysX over parameters. So there is a Mark II version of this, and you gain some and you lose some. So a big thing for someone like Dubstation Zero is to be able to sequence this thing. And so being able to control it over MIDI is very cool. And this only has like MIDI on and off note messages. It doesn't have SysX. The envelopes are linear, so they're going to have a more straight digital sound to them. The Mark II, which came out a couple of years later, is going to have a more exponential or analog sounding envelope shape to them, which might sound better. But what they also did was they got rid of the incredible analog chorus in the synthesizer and replaced it with the digital delay line from the Korg DW8000, 6000, or actually I think the 6000 had the analog chorus too, right? But the 8000 and the DSS-1 and maybe another synth I'm not thinking of had a digital chorus / delay, which was more flexible. So in some sense, at the time, that was seen as an improvement because everybody loved digital everything at that time. But you could turn the chorus into a delay, so you could actually get discrete echoes, or you could tighten the time up and make it sound more like a chorus. Now, in today's day and age, 2024, to me, I'm always going to want to go with the analog chorus if I have the option on a synthesizer, because we've got so many great digital choruses out there, including the free one that you can get in the link of this video, Inktomi, my plugin. So there's really not a reason to, for me, I guess the thing is with the Poly 800 and Marks 1 and 2, you have to sort of make a decision, okay, which features do I care about more? And you can't have it both ways, unfortunately. Lots of these really kind of organy string sounds, because that's obviously with the oscillators what it's going to excel at. Sorry, let's go ahead and 6-2. Got a little bit of noise in that brass. See, I don't mind a nice organy type sound. Yeah, it's actually pretty good, isn't it? I think that resonance sounds great. Wow. Just pretty impressive, isn't it? Oh, and again, we do have the ability to invert the polarity on these envelopes. So you can do these inverted filter shapes where the release actually goes up as opposed to going down, which is what we're more familiar with analog synths. So again, the actual programming and complexity of sounds you can get out of the synthesizer in some ways is rivaled by no other synthesizer, which is crazy from the era or whatever. But even today, I mean, if you want to buy a modern sequential synth, I'm not aware of a single one that has a separate amplifier for each voice. I suppose you could do some bitimbral stuff to kind of get there. That might be the way you would have to do it. But yeah, it's just super interesting. Kind of like a vocally. What do you guys think so far? Kind of an interesting little atonal type deal there. Plenty of Oberheim goodness. And again, we could go just to parameter 48 and turn that off if we wanted to hear. One thing I would say about this synthesizer is because of the digitally controlled oscillator nature, it really does benefit from the analog chorus. I think it sounds very good and really helps break up what could be a bit of a static sound. Depending, like this sound is more detuned, right? A really cool sort of Euro lead sound. Like thin but not too bright, right? Well, Treb, actually, welcome to the stream, but another thing is that there's no way to do real-time filter control with an unmodified Poly 800. They actually make what's called a Moog Slayer kit or mod for this, where you can do both cutoff, resonance, and filter FM on one of these guys, which I might consider doing because it's such a cool synth. I wanted to make sure I got out videos of this synthesizer unmodified, but that might be something I do in the future. For the love of noise, welcome to the stream. These are not digital oscillators. It's not a hybrid synth. It is a analog synth all the way through. So these are digitally controlled analog oscillators, just like a Juno 106. Basically, just the tuning of the oscillators is controlled digitally, but the oscillators themselves are analog. See, these are some like good organ type sounds. For the love of noise, yeah, I do sort of agree that if I had to have one synthesizer, the Korg Poly 800 or the Korg DW8000, I probably would go with the DW8000. They usually go for about $800, and you usually can get these for less than $400. There's a link to one on Reverb I saw today for $309 fucking dollars, which is crazy. So I think that for spending the extra, like double, do you get double the synth with a DW8000? In my opinion, no. But you do get a full synth that you probably will never have a sense of like there's a limitation on it, which because of the single filter on this synth, there is that component here. So if you had to have only one synth, okay, if you're a producer or a musician who works primarily in the box or something like that, or you have a few modern digital synths and you want to figure out, okay, is there some magic to vintage analog synthesizers? This is your boy. Buy this. This is so freaking good. Sounds phenomenal, really. And for the price, it's a no-brainer. I had so much fun a few streams back, a few weeks ago. We also checked out the Kwai K4. That would be a very equivalent priced synthesizer, $400 or less, that I would consider the best vintage digital synth to get. Like if you had to just have one, go with that one. It sounds awesome. And this sounds awesome. So you could get a vintage digital polysynth and a vintage digital analog synth, or a vintage analog synth for like $800 and be like fucking set. Like you don't need anything more than this 90% of the time. Where the other synths come in is if you want a little bit more tango or a little bit more shablang on your sound. There's going to be certain sounds that this can't do. And that's the case for everything, but I think for a lot of producers out there, this could be the one synth to get. And then there's kind of like the next tier up would be the Korg DW8000, the Ensoniq ESQ1, the Roland Alpha Juno. They're kind of more like $400 to $800 synths, whereas this is in that 400 and less synthesizer point. Sorry to hear you had a faulty one. Again, the filter just sounds great. And we have these complex envelopes, so that's what you're hearing there. Go ahead and try and make that with a mini Moog. So one thing that might have contributed to the synthesizer having a reputation of having digital oscillators is it sounds like we're hearing digital oscillator whine or aliasing in the filter, which you will hear on a synth like the Kwai K4, but we're not actually. What we're hearing is a square wave up at 2 feet when we also have one at 16 feet. So that's quite an octave spread. Hopefully you guys can see this on the stream. I deliberately set the camera over here so you can see the parameter numbers a little bit better. I know I like to keep my studio dark and sexual, just like I am, so I apologize for that, but that is what you get on this channel. If you want a brightly lit studio, go check out Lou Pop's channel. He's over there. I'm over here in the sexual darkness. Speaking of sexual darkness, I don't really know what's going on with that sound. Oh, interesting. So again, this is using the separate envelopes here to create this, and the ability to tune these oscillators to, I think, fifths? No, it's actually tuning it to, it's tuning it to the seventh here. Yeah, so very interesting sort of sound to it. And again, you can hear we have an octave, or I'm sorry, an interval in here. And this is another thing. I just like to point this out. You cannot do this with a Korg Poly 6 or a Korg Monopoly. Synthesizers that sell for a lot more than this. So if we go to parameter 31, we can see that we have a value of 7, which is a fifth. We can change that to a fourth. If we wanted to make it a major third, we could kind of get like raver cheesiness. Right? We could get a whole octave out of it. We could get stranger values. Right? If we wanted all sorts of interesting stuff to come out of that. Seconds. Right? So this is really powerful stuff that can be done on the synthesizer that's not capable there. We do have a chord memory mode, just like we have on the Poly 6 and I think on the Monopoly. One of the hazards of doing this live is that I don't always remember every single factoid about the synths that I have. And you guys are seeing that live in person. Dan, welcome to the stream. Yes, I agree that is cool. Neon Ether, welcome to the stream. Got the synth recently for $300. Fuck yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm here for, is getting people awesome vintage synths on the cheap. You know, for me, like if a synthesizer can be cheaper than a Behringer modern clone of a vintage synth, that's a really cool space to be. I'm not commenting on Behringer. Don't lash out at me in the comments. Oh my God. This might be my favorite organ patch too, by the way. Can I get some scum organs? I'm freaking talking about. Trev, it does have a little bit of that sound, but I was worried it would sound more like a Casio phase distortion synth. And to me, it really, if I had to compare it to the Casio thing, which I've had those synths too, or more of like the Juno thing, I think it's closer to that. Oh God, it's so good. Also, just one of my favorite synth sounds I've heard. Yeah, so there are free VSTs of this. For me, it's kind of like the Kwai K1 VST. I know there's a free version out there. I really encourage people to buy a vintage synthesizer. And there's no better value synthesizer than this one to get. Go ahead and get the VST if you want to try it out and just sort of like kind of get your head around it or something. But for me personally, I think having a analog filter, like Nick, aka Dubstation Zero, and I have talked about this a lot. The analog filter is such a missing piece to a lot of synthesis. So you can have awesome digital oscillators, and I'm in, right? I don't need an oscillator necessarily to be analog. The magic tends to happen at the filter stage. And if there's a wonderful vintage analog filter in a synthesizer, you probably can bet that I will spend money on it. Not every fucking vintage filter is great. I'm looking at you, the Casio HT6000. I didn't fucking like how that filter sounded. But this filter is good. If this synth has a failing, it's not at the filter stage, in my opinion. That's warm. You could get upset about, you know, all sorts of things like the way the oscillators are, stuff like that. But not that filter, in my opinion. Are you kidding me? I feel like I've managed to play more wrong notes than normal, and I apologize, but you know, that's the fun of doing this live. Is it's not edited, it's not perfect. You guys get to see the rawness, and you know, some of y'all like it raw. Oh, this is that really great flute patch. So we're almost done with the presets. And what's interesting is how it's using the third envelope here to control the amplifier of the noise as well as the filter. So that's something you can't do in most synths. In most synths, the way it works is you have, you know, an oscillator or two that's fed into the filter, and you can usually mix in some noise. Not on every synth. You can't mix in noise on a Korg Poly 6, for instance. But on this synthesizer, you have an independent envelope for the noise as well. So you can do things like have the noise come in and out independent of what's going on with the rest of the synth, which I think is super cool. 87 here. Moteur says the Polybeast Moog Slayer mods are essential. It sounds great, but can it do Running Up That Hill? Let's see if we could find a good patch here. What was it? Right. So we have now covered all of the different stuff in the synthesizer. So I think this would be a great time for us to actually sort of break the synth down into its individual components. And so the first thing I'm going to do is go over to the filter here. So parameter number 41, and we're going to just increase the value all the way up. I don't know if you can hold it. Oh yeah, if you hold it, it goes fast. I hadn't even tried that. Just so that we have the filter all the way open, I'm going to go to parameter 42. There's no resonance, but I just want to double check that. I don't think this works in real time. Oh, it does. So you have something like real-time control, but of course, if you wanted to have the control of like having an actual knob, you could get the Moog Slayer mod. But I think it was fun to do this stream without it, because a lot of the times people feel like if you don't have knobs, you're like fucked. You're like alone in an abandoned ship in the fucking ocean on a desert island. There's just no fucking way you can program this thing. It is just way too complicated. It's not the case. It's actually very easy to program. So then what we're going to do is we're going to turn off DCO2. So that's parameter 27. I love the fact that we actually, a lot of the stuff is very intelligently laid out. So for instance, DCO2 27, 17 is the level of DCO1, right? So you kind of can build up a lot of memory quicker than you think you'd be able to, because you're like, oh, 7, that's like the value for the level. And so you could control it that way. So we're going to just turn parameter 7 all the way off, and then we'll go to 17. And again, see, I didn't even have to look. I know what it is, and I can turn the volume all the way up for that. Maybe not all the way up. It's kind of loud. and this is going to give us the ability to actually hear what's going on with the synthesizer. I'm going to go to mode 18 here, and I'm going to put it to whole mode. That also would effectively turn DCO2 off, but that allows us to get 8 notes of polyphony out of the thing. It's still very loud, so I might actually still go into parameter 17 and turn that down a little more. I guess what I'm just trying to say, for the love of noise, is that for me, this is not as bad as some of the other synthesizers from this era. There are absolutely other synths from this era where this kind of parameter programming thing sucks. I appreciate the fact that I believe, unlike the DW8000, which I love that synthesizer, but I believe on that synth, you have to enter the parameter number and then enter the value number. Whereas this has a separate value up and down arrow. And that's like a huge difference, actually. It makes it much easier to just enter a parameter number and change what you want, as opposed to the way it, like, your brain has to trip over itself to go from the mode of thinking what parameter do I want to thinking value, right? That really sucks. And there's a few other synths like that that I'm not going to name. We'll just talk about it later. Let's go over and check out waveform. So waveform does not control, on the synthesizer, I don't know if you can see it here, it's got a sawtooth wave and a square wave. It does not control, counterintuitively, the shape of the waves. You would think that that's what that would mean, right? But what it's actually doing is changing the relative level of the waves. So for now, let's just put it to square wave, the first value, so we can hear what's going on with the synthesizer. And then we can change those values. So now we have 16, 8, 4, and 2. Now, in a video I have coming up on this, comparing this synth to the Poly 6 and the Monopoly, I say that I think this is based on divide down oscillators. I'm now not so convinced about that. Again, sorry for my cough. I was reading on Wikipedia that it's actually based off of an arcade chip. I don't fucking know. What's happening here is we have additive synthesis, but with square waves instead of sine waves, which is very clever. So we've got 16 feet, 8, 4, and 2. That's just octaves for those of you guys. I'm assuming most of you guys know synths well enough to know that, but if you don't, that's just different octaves. And so what we're doing is we're turning on and off different octaves of square waves to give different waveforms. So if I go to 13 here, and let's say I'm going to leave that one on, but we'll go to 14, we'll turn it off, 15, we'll turn it off, and 16, we'll turn it off. We should hear just a square wave. I've got the chorus on, so why don't we turn that off real quick? You can hear there's actually a little bit of vibrato on there from the modulation generator, which is Korg's phrase for vibrato. So we could go to 83, and we could just turn that off. And we have a little bit of attack, that's 51. We just turn that off on. So now we have, finally, just a sort of naked square wave oscillator. Right? And at this point, we've lost a lot of level because we've turned off one of potentially 8 oscillators that we actually stack up. Going back to the oscillators, now we can turn on oscillator 2. So I'm going to play it with it off and then on so you can hear what it sounds like when we add that higher octave. Kind of sounds like a pulse wave to me now. Right? If we move on to 15, I'm going to now play this and then add it in so you can hear the difference. So this is sort of where you can get the organ type sounds very easily. But it's kind of thin sounding, right? A little bit. We'll add 16 and I'll play it one more time, off and then on so your brain can recognize it without my stupid voice interrupting it. So yeah, now for me, when I hear a sound that high, my brain goes to E pianos, right? So if I want to get that electric piano DX70 type thing, I'm thinking I want a sound that has a really high sort of time that I can then filter out with the awesome analog filter. We could maybe do that later too. Very organy. And actually sounds very good to my ears. Now, let's go back to parameter 12, which is waveform. And let's hear the difference between if I play notes, and we'll do it with chords too, so your brain can get, I don't know why I address your guys' brains, so you can hear the differences between the different modes. And all it's doing, again, is it's changing those relative levels of those waveforms. So on square wave, it sort of sounds like an organ. So I'm not exactly sure, but if I had to make a guess, I would say that the square wave mode is a more flat disbursement because you're hearing those high frequencies more. Whereas when you put it onto sawtooth mode, I think it scales those octaves down. So it's approximating what a sawtooth wave actually looks like in real life. And what's so fascinating about this is it does sound like a sawtooth wave. Pretty damn close. Now, if I play that lower, you'll notice something. Versus, I think this is the root of the misconception that this has digital oscillators, because that little whine up there sounds somewhat akin to digital oscillator aliasing, but comparing it to synths like we did the Kawai K3 not long ago on this stream, if you listen to that synth, you'd absolutely hear the difference between digital oscillator aliasing and this. You can hear that, you know, but you hear that in there. And again, that's because of the nature of this synthesizer. As far as the oscillators go, it's still stacking 16, 8, 4, and 2 foot waveforms together, so square waves. It's just doing it in a different way, different relative volumes to give you a more of a sawtooth sound. And it's a lot fatter than. So depending on what you're trying to do, it might be the case that you want more of that type of a sound. So let's go to 17. I'm going to leave it on sawtooth for now. Oh, actually, wait. Let me go back real quick. Let's go back to parameter 13 and turn the lowest foot off. We almost have like an octave up sawtooth wave now. Right? We could go to 14, or I'm sorry, yeah, what is it? 14, turn that off. And we only have that highest one. Let's put parameter 13, let's put it back on. And now we have like a hollow sawtooth wave. Right? Where we've got, what do we have? We have 13 on, 14 off, 15. Let's turn that off too. Now we have an almost like halfway between sawtooth and square wave sound if we have only the 2 foot on. If I turn the 2 foot off, we're back to just a real square wave. If I turn 2 foot on, it's a little different, right? We could do all sorts of different blends here. And going back to parameter 12, when we change the waveform shape, which again is just changing the relative volumes, you can hear we get a different sound versus, right? Going back here, we could turn 14 off, which is the 8 foot. We could turn the 4 foot on and the 16 foot off, and now we're gonna have a different sound. Dan says, it always sounds like an organ because it isn't a 2 oscillators per voice synth. That's not true. So we could put this into double mode, which I'm about to do, and it will have 2 oscillators per voice. So yeah, that we're getting there. But I just wanted to show the really complex nature of the synthesizer. Right? Just at the oscillator level, there's a lot more sonic capacity than a lot of people think. So why don't we just turn on all of the waveforms, so we should get a sawtooth wave again. Sorry, that's on square wave mode if we put it in a sawtooth mode. Right, then we can go to level 17, right? What am I doing wrong? Yep, and turn that all the way off. And then we can go to 27. Remember from before where I said you start to pick up on that. What am I doing wrong here? Oh, I need to put the DCO into mode 2. Now 27 will let me turn the second oscillator on. And you can hear it has a completely different shape to it. Much faster decay. So what I'm going to do is go to 65. Again, I'm going a little fast here, guys, but I think you guys can handle it. And we'll just increase the sustain, right? Let's have a nice sustain. I'm going to have to increase the breakpoint as well, because again, these are complicated oscillators. They're not just your simple ADSRs. We'll turn the attack off. That's 61. So we should be pretty close, right, to our previous sort of thing. So why don't we go to, we're going to go to waveform 22 and set it to square wave mode. 23 on, 24 on, 25, 26. So now we should have that organ sound that we had before. And for the love of noise, there is, of course, the free reverb plugin I made. Links in the description, Inktomi. Definitely try that out with this synth. For today, I elected not to put reverb on. I kind of go back and forth depending on the stream. Some streams I put reverb on. Some streams I leave it off. It's just kind of off of what I feel like doing. So why don't we go to the first DCO and turn it back on, right? So that's parameter 17. I'm sorry, 17. And let's turn that back on. And now we should have two oscillators, right? So this, Dan, is showing you that you can get two oscillators per voice. And in this case, I'm using both the sawtooth wave and the more organ sounding square wave modes, because DCO2 is on square wave and DCO1 is on sawtooth wave. Parameter 32 is the detune value. So we could get really tight tuning, which is going to sound really fat for like bassline stuff. Right? I guess we'd have to change the octaves here. So let's go to 1. Right? And what would that be? 21. If we wanted to get some of each, that one. Dan, no, each voice is 1 per voice. I mean, I'm showing you right now that there's detuning per voice, right? So how would that be possible to detune the voices if there's only 1 DCO per voice, right? That's not how this synth works. It actually has, it does have an additional amplifier for each oscillator, so that's a thing. But no, this is a 2. Inherently, you can put it in either 1 oscillator per voice for 8 voices of polyphony, or 2 oscillators per voice for 4 voices of polyphony. That's just how the synth works. So this is it with no detune. Let's go up here. 25% detune. Sounds pretty good. Well, then what are you talking about, Dan? This is 50%? 75? Starting to get a little seasick, right? Pretty wonky, and we can, that's the, or I'm sorry, not 75, that's the full value. But at value 2, so you've got 0, 1, 2, and 3, right? You can get some pretty damn cool, no chorus, right? Some really thick sounds. Right? Which I think sounds very cool. We also have noise, so we could increase the noise value here. You can hear that the noise actually has, again, envelope 3 is controlling the noise, so we have an interesting shape going on there. It's like... welcome to the stream, Hans. How's it going, my friend? Yeah, so we'll worry about noise later. That's not super important for what we're trying to do today. We have... Why don't we add some release to the sound? So 56 and 66, again, the intelligent way that this synthesizer is laid out. Attack is 51, 61, and 71 for the 3 envelopes. Decay is 52, 62, 72 for the 3 envelopes, etc., etc. So 56, 66, and 76 are the releases. So let's go to 56, and we'll increase it to, like, let's say 24. Yeah. Then 66, 24. And then 76, we'll make it like 22. So the filter closes just a little bit faster. Dan says, never ever does it have 2 oscillators per voice. You can have 2 patches at once, but no, always 1 filter per voice. There's only 1 filter in the synth, but it could do 2 oscillators per voice. I'm showing you right now. I don't know what to tell you, Dan. So we're going to make a nice pad sound. We've got a nice big... And I love the fact that you can kind of get an organ type sound as well as a thick analog lush sawtooth sound. Detuning 2 oscillators per voice. Let's see. Gingy, welcome to the stream. Is this polypupper filter modded? No, it is not. So this is an original one. I might at some point get the Moog Slayer filter mod, which allows you to add cutoff resonance and filter FM, because that'd be super cool. But I wanted to make sure that I at least got a video and a live stream up with this synth just on its own. That way you guys could hear what this synth sounds like with no fucking... Because, like, most people are not going to mod a synth. They just want to buy a synth and have it sound great. And I think the synth does. I don't even think you need to modify it. I understand why you would, because it's cool, but, like, you do not need it. Aside from if you're really into tweaking the filter live when you're recording, right? That would be a cool advantage. But and the mod kit's not expensive, but it's, you know, a few more steps. You have to open the synth up and stuff. For a lot of people, they're going to want to just buy a cool synth. And that's what I think is so great about this thing, is that it's a really cool piece of history that you could make music with. Anyways, let's go ahead and let's bring the cutoff down. So that's parameter 41. And let's bring that down. Really, it could go really dark. Let's see how much it can get crazy with the filter. So 42 is the filter. We've got some keyboard tracking in there, but let's go ahead. Let's turn keyboard tracking off. Turn that all the way off. And what else do we need? EG intensity is 45. Let's turn that all the way off. So now we're hearing just the filter, and now I want to know how deep we can get with it. So... So yeah, one thing I'll say about the filter is I wouldn't go so far as to say it's like the most like ripping filter I've ever heard. I think it's got some good character, but it's not super, super crazy. What we're going to do now, I found this kind of nice, real dark sound. And what we're going to do is we're going to add EG intensity, 45, onto it. And we're going to add some. So we've turned it all the way up so you can hear what the filter is actually doing. And this is a complex filter. And so what we're hearing is the attack, the decay, the breakpoint, the slope, the sustain, release. So I'm going to assume a lot of you guys know what a 6-stage envelope's like, but some of y'all won't. So the way to think about this is that the breakpoint, the attack and decay, totally normal, except for decay doesn't decay to the sustain point. It decays to the breakpoint. And the breakpoint is like your first sustain. And then slope is your second decay, right? It's your decay from the breakpoint to the sustain. I know it's a little complicated to visualize that or to think about that, but it's not that bad once you get used to it. There's really only a couple of applications for it that make it more advantageous when you have an inverted envelope. Because if you have an invertible envelope, you can get a lot of cool sounds out of it. But in this case, what we can do with this is we can, let's just go to each one of these parameters and see where we're at. So attack is at 0. Decay is at 11. So if I increase that to 20, how high can this go? 31. We can see how slow the decay will actually go. We can get pretty slow decay times, but then you heard it jump back up because it's got a fast slope time. Good Dog, welcome to the stream. I'm so excited about that. For the love of noise, yes, the Alpha Juno has a 6-stage. That's what that is. And they're pretty similar sort of a thing. Hey, Lemon, how's it going? My cat just got here. So then moving on to 73, that value is the breakpoint, which is all the way down. So it's going to decay to the breakpoint and then go all the way back up. So why don't we go to sustain? That's 75. Y'all better know what sustain is, right? So we're going to put that all the way up. The breakpoint, 73, is all the way down. And then we're going to bring the slope to a medium value. So let's go for 15. And we'll go for the decay also to 15. So you should be able to hear this pretty well. Hi, Lemon. Can you hear Lemon? I don't know. You want to say hi to everybody real quick? Hi, Lemon. Oh, yeah. My blind cat, she's got the one big blue eye. I don't know if you guys can see that. She's beautiful. Thank you for hanging out with us, Lemon. I think she thinks there are something for her in here, some treats or something like that. But fortunately, I don't have any with me right now. Anyways, enough time for the cats. Can I get some scum lemons in the chat? You can hear that we have this shape now of opening and closing. Which sort of to me sounds a bit like an inverted envelope, except you don't have to take your fingers off to get the filter to open back up. Now, if that doesn't sound that interesting to you, don't forget we could also add attack here, and so we could get a double wah-wah type sound. And that's what you can't do with basically any synthesizer with less than that number of envelope, or that many stages to the envelope. This actually sounds very good with the trigger mode like this. So trigger modes, what's interesting about it is it's a synth that feels like it's polyphonic, but the trigger mode feels very monophonic, like if you're used to a mono synth. The fact that if you sustain notes, you can keep playing really works for this particular envelope shape. super cool. And that's something you really can't do with any other synthesizer. Here's another way to use this. It's actually the same type of idea. This is how we're going to make our awesome pad sound. But what we're going to do this time is actually kind of just treat the breakpoint as the first sustain point. So that's how I often think about it. Is one of the problems with a 4-stage envelope is without something like a LFO to kick in, your sound is going to get very static. And we can actually demonstrate that if I set the breakpoint and the sustain to the same level. So I would set both to 15 right now, and then 75, I believe, to 15. And that will effectively turn the slope stage off. Now, when I hold a note, aside from the detune of the oscillators, it can get kind of boring, right? Really not that much going on. However, if we set the breakpoint and the sustain where the breakpoint's slightly lower than the sustain with a nice slow slope, what happens is that from, so we'll increase the slope, 74. Why don't we bring that up to like a pretty good number? I'm guessing like around 24. And then we'll go to 73 and bring it down a little further. Let's bring it even further. We need to increase that slope a lot more. So we'll go to the slope, right? Let's bring that all the way up and see what we get. So I really like using this type of envelope shape, and I used it on something like the Fender Chroma Polaris as well, where instead of the envelope just hitting that sustain stage and getting really boring, it slowly, slightly opens. That's correct, Ricky. So there's actually 9 ADB SSR envelopes for the thing. And especially what's cool is that the third envelope works on the noise. Super Solid says, I'm 10 minutes behind on the stream, but the oscillators don't beat against each other like regular 2-oscillator synth. Yes, they do. I don't know what to say. Yes, there's one filter for all voices. That's what the synth is. It's a paraphonic synth, just like the Korg Monopoly, or the modern version of this would be something like the Moog Matriarch. But yeah, so it gives you some flexibility to really open up the sound. Now, let's go to the attack stage and increase that. And then we need to increase the decay. So I brought it up to 26. Let's try adding the decay up to 26 as well. We might actually decrease the the EG amount. What I think is happening right now is that the filter is actually going supersonic. We probably don't need it to go quite as high. So let's bring it half as high. Yeah, even at half the value, it's still quite bright. So we can bring that down to a value of 5. Maybe we'll bring it up to 7. I'm going for, you know, moody. Yeah, so that's very cinematic. Let's increase the attack time just a bit. A little less. Let's increase the release times of both of the envelopes or for the synthesizer. Bring that up a little bit more. And we need to increase the piece of the sustain. So again, it's 56, 66, and 76. It's very easy to remember. Let's bring it up even more. Let's bring 56, 66. Let's increase the volume a bit, and 27. It does sound really good, doesn't it? We could try increasing the detune a little bit more. It's just a little seasick. I wish there was a value between 2 and 3. Right? And so that's starting to sound really nice, right? Let's increase the resonance and see what we get. So let's just put a little bit in there. You'll notice that the LFO is affecting, it must be affecting the resonance as well. Oh, maybe not. There's a little bit of some movement in there I'm hearing. I don't know what that is. Let's try 83. Yeah, no, I don't know. Interesting. In there. I guess it's a fucking analog synth. Really cinematic. Now, we have some options here. We could go to the detune real quick. Why don't we turn that all the way down, but let's add an interval. So 31, let's bring it up to 7. So that'll give us something a little bit more. Oh, yeah. That note doesn't have a 7th, so that's going to sound weird. I have to kind of clear that bad note. If I play a bad note, there's so much release. Hard to dust it in on this one. So that's one thing we could do, right? We could also turn the interval off and go to the octave and increase it on octave 2. So now we'll get even more of a range on that organ oscillator. And here it's like really bright. And if we wanted to, we could go to 81 here and just slow that, the modulation generator, which is just Korg speak for LFO, down, and that's affecting the keyboard, joystick, as well. Real slow, if we want to have like a really like just bring in some movement there. Let's see, can I finger bang this? Oh, come on. It's hard to do that particular reach. I've got a pretty good reach, but that one that was rough. Right, so that's a possibility, or we could go super seasick. With the movement generator as well, modulation generator. So those are options. Joystick for me, it just gets a little too fast, a little too quick. Maybe on the Poly 800 with the different envelopes, it might affect that somehow. I don't know. But very cool sound. Anyways, back to where we were. Let's just play that riff again. I think I'm okay with the octave of, so let's go to 21. Let's bring it back down. Actually, let's experiment with it down an octave and see what that's like. Welcome. I mean, that's a gorgeous synth sound. I don't care who you are. Now, the most important part. Here's where it goes fucking through the roof. You're welcome. I mean, come on, right? How warm and juicy and thick with 47 Cs does this synthesizer sound? This is not a cheap phase distortion Casio synthesizer. That is what I need you out there in the world to know deeply, because when I'm playing those notes, let's thicken it up even more. I know out there's some non-believers. Parameter 22, let's put it into sawtooth mode. It's going to get even thicker. I'm not saying it's Eric Persing's soundtrack, but it's freaking good. I mean, it's freaking good. I think that this synthesizer is pretty incredible in terms of what can be done with it. So what can be done with it? Let's take this sound and take it a little bit someplace else. So parameter 21, let's bring the octave up, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to increase the attack, because right now we've been kind of using both of the envelopes similarly. This is parameter 61. Why don't we increase the attack quite a bit? And let's increase the level. That's, what is that level, 27? Oh, so you can hear that second layer come in. Change the interval to a 7th and see what we've got here. All right, let's increase the attack even further. oscillators between a couple of values. So it's interesting because you can get this like warm pluck, but then the seventh comes in. Level down a bit and the second level up, so it's 27. Let's bring that up a bit and just see what we can get here. Yes, that's absolutely true, Aquatic. It doesn't have nearly the flexibility of the matriarch in certain ways, right? That's going to be the nature of most, the matriarch is almost like borderline modular, right? So yeah, now we're really into a territory where we've created a super cool sounding pad that has both oscillators tuned an octave apart as well as an interval apart and coming in and out of the sound at different times. This is something you cannot do on a Juno 106. This is something you cannot do on a Prophet 5, right? It's really incredible what's happening here. Let's see here. Ambient Nod says, for the love of noise, I have it. What do you think that strong points are? It'd be interesting to know. To get a usable amount out of that filter, but we could do it just using the modulation generator. So if we go to 84 and just increase it a bit, let's see what we get. Yeah, so like a value of 3 is pretty big. Maybe I'll dial that back. Right, so we get some more movement in there. We might need to increase the EG intensity a bit just to give us that that sound, right? A little bit more of that in there. Maybe not quite as much. Split the difference. Isaac, welcome to the stream. Yeah, it's pretty incredible, right? All of that movement in the sound with that analog filter. Yeah, just great. So I think that's a good place to leave it for tonight. We've basically covered most of the functions here. We didn't really fuck with the noise too much. We could add that in a little if we want to just put a little bit of noise, just so you guys could hear it. Now just imagine that with some delay and reverb, right? You have like a nice wind in there. That sounds fucking good. Matt, how's it going? Wow. Just incredible. Yeah, throw an analog chorus pedal and yeah, you're basically there. It's pretty sweet. So we'll call it there for the evening. Definitely thank you for everybody for hanging out. I hope that you guys found this to be a valuable insight into why you don't have to spend crazy amounts of money on expensive vintage analog synthesizers. There's a lot of really great ones out there, and for $309, a piece of history from 1983, I think it is probably the most underrated vintage synthesizer of all time. Ted, welcome to the stream. Sorry that I'm just catching you now. Listen, on Saturday, I'm going to be doing a video. I have a video premiering that is a blind shootout between the Korg Poly 800 as well as its more expensive sister, the Korg Poly 6 here. And then I've also got the Korg Monopoly, which is even more expensive than that. So it's a blind shootout between the Poly 800. So I want to know if you can hear the difference between the Poly 800 and something as expensive as a Korg Monopoly, which goes for about 10 times as much. So really excited for that stream. I think it's going to be, or it's not a stream, it's a video, right? I do that on this channel too. So if ye be brave, I want you guys to throw some comments into that video when it comes out on Saturday. Looking forward to it. Continue to be excellent, guys, and I will see you there.